Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest ICB TV. I'm Garry Carter, as hopefully most of you now know. Many of you have been with us for the previous 5 issues of this, so this is a good day. I have 2 very experienced guests with me today, not just 1, but 2. I have Jacquie Mount, who's back with us, our technical advisor and chief know-it-all. And today, as an extra visitor, we have Paula Veysey-Smith, who is our chairman of council. She's a fellow practicing bookkeeper for you out there. And she's been there, done that, and a bit like Jacquie, all wearing the T-shirt, which is great. So hello, Jacquie. Hello, Paula.
Hi, guys. Hi. Hi.
Just a couple of points that have been raised before we get into the straight conversation. We've had a number of people saying that they've noticed that there are 1 or 2 non-members being allowed onto this discussion platform. And yeah, we do at the moment allow external people to come into this, very much because we are, as the Institute, seen as the professional voice of bookkeeping. So we didn't want to limit it specifically. There are 1 or 2 people on there, with hindsight, we might want to have held off, and that is being worked on at the moment. But generally speaking, I think the more people we can draw into the ICB fold at the moment, hopefully the more people will want to remain part of it, and we can introduce them into membership, or if they just keep taking the, just keep joining in and not contributing, then we might think about it. But the people that I've spoken to have been saying very nice messages, saying it was lovely to be invited in to be part of the ICB program, and we've loved it. And I know certainly we've had at least 1 person I know that has immediately jumped in to apply for membership. So there is that to it. But I think also the wider we can spread our message about ICB and who we are, the better. I know we've had a couple of businesses linking in. So those are people who haven't yet got a bookkeeper, but are now hopefully thinking about it. And the format today is going to be very much a chat like before. And we've also got Amy Copeland online. Hi, Amy.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Amy is going to be grouping the questions and asking them so that we don't have to keep scrolling the people who are speaking. However, she has promised to name names, because you do like to hear your name credited against any of the major questions.
Can I quickly say, if you've got a burning question for our panelists, can you use the Q&A function rather than the chat? Because the chat keeps going up and up and up, and it's easy to get lost. But if you go to the bottom of the main window, one of the options is Q&A. There's 2 speech bubbles, and the letters Q&A. And you can actually vote and upvote people's questions if you want to. So I think it's a handier way to ask your questions, and then I can hopefully keep on top of it and get those questions answered.
Okay. Oh, well, that's new. I wasn't aware of that, so that's good.
Thanks, Diane. She's already done it. Brilliant.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Just to tell you what's going on for the rest of the week, just so that you are aware. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the guest for tomorrow is Bill Dodwell. Bill is director of the Office for Tax Simplification. So his office is tucked away somewhere in the bowels of the Treasury building. So he's an important man, and his department is looking at ways of simplifying the tax system for business. And I think it's going to be quite interesting, because one of the things that I believe has been coming out of government when it's been talking about all of the effort that it's making to support us is that it wants to try and simplify things. And I think it might use this downtime, if I can call it that, as an excuse to wheel out a few new initiatives and new things that it wants to do with tax. So I think that's important for us as bookkeepers to see what the future might be looking like. On Thursday, we've then got Ian, who is our resident is our resident payroll expert, one of them, Ian Holloway. And he's coming along to talk to us. Hopefully by then he'll have a presentation on exactly what you do in your payroll to reflect the changes, the things that are happening at the moment. And then on Friday, we've got a bit of a double header. Again, we've got Nick Good, Some of you might remember Nick, those of you who've been coming to conferences. He was working originally for Sage. He was a vice president with Sage, and he did a presentation probably about 5 or 6 years ago now on stage at Summit. He's now moved, and he is now vice president of growth for Revolut Business. And Revolut is a new one, the new challenger bank. So he's going to come on and talk to us about the way that they and other challenger banks are shaking up the banking system and how this will benefit business and what it actually means. And what, as a new bank that's starting from scratch, a bit like some of the software companies did many years ago, suddenly burst onto the scene, but picked up all the things that people wanted and fed it back to them. And I think they're trying to do this with banking. And this new business arm of what has been a very successful challenger bank, as they're called, for individuals, is now trying to talk to small businesses, and therefore they want to come and talk, obviously, to such a wonderful audience as you are. Then on top of that, we've got one of our own coming on again, Jane James, who is a fellow of the Institute. And many years ago, when we did our first promotional video about members of the Institute, Jane was one of the people on there. And at that time, she was bringing up a little toddler, who I gather now is in his 20s, but nonetheless. And she is not only running her own practice, but she was very heavily involved with councils. She then got elected to become a councillor. And she's now actually a district and town councillor with the Brecon District Council. And she's an executive support member, which means that she supports the executive. So she has influence, if you like, over different things that the council do. And of course, councils at the moment are very heavily involved with the government initiatives to help out small businesses. So she's going to come on and talk to us about that. And interestingly, because she works for the local council, she's actually our very own PEP. Those of you who are into money laundering things, our own politically exposed person, because she has access to grants and various other things. So we've got her for 3 reasons. But anyway, okay, so Paula, if I could go to you first. You've had 2 successful webinars at the moment, just branch meetings, virtual branch meetings. And so how's that gone?
Well, I assisted Claire Allen last night with the East Sussex, and it went very, very well. People engaged. It was very interesting to hear how bookkeepers are, the bookkeepers in the regions are faring at the moment. Kind of a mixed story. We had the Kent one at lunchtime, massive take up. I think we had about 30 people join in. And again, for me, the branch meetings being done by Zoom is not possible in these because the amount of people who join in. But with the more regional ones, it gives people a chance to tell us their stories and how they're getting on, and hear their questions. So they were both absolutely fabulous.
And you were saying before that you managed to get a few people who've not plucked up the courage to come to a live branch meeting, but they felt a bit more secure coming at them through a laptop or something. So you'd had a few members who'd been around for a while, but you'd never seen them, never met them.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I had more people book in to the virtual Kent branch than I've ever had come to a meeting, and certainly one person past comment, I didn't have enough, I didn't feel ready to come to a branch meeting I've logged in today. Really enjoyed it, and it is a super way to see people in your own network, in your own region, and be able to interact with them. You don't even need to have the video on if you feel uncomfortable, but there was just a general sense of enjoying chatting and being together.
And I know we've just had a note from Kirsty St. John about the Cambridgeshire meetings. It's getting more people booking onto that. So, yeah, I think this is good. The other thing that I noticed is we've had a number of disabled people saying that previously branch meetings were probably not, they didn't feel that they were accessible. But now that they're able to join in, it's given them that extra confidence. So I think that they're proving to be very successful.
Yeah, I believe so. I've spoken to a number of my colleagues and those who have run a virtual one. There's been nothing but positive comments. And what I think we need to do is look at this as a building block on how we take branches forward.
Yeah.
Because I think in line with yourself as well. We don't want the virtual stuff to overtake the coming together, but because of the self-isolation, it's given us the chance to launch the virtual meetings. Yeah. And now when we go forward, we can look at, well, how do we bring the virtual together with the coming together? And that was certainly Claire last night and myself today did quiz the members like, no, this is a new way forward. This is something we can provide you, but there's also an importance of coming together as well. And how do we work that in? So I think the branch network going forward is going to be very exciting. We've got a lot of new things we can work with. Yeah,
I think the thing is that the world is changing. We're not quite sure what's going to happen when we finally get let out of our respective rabbit hutches. I mean, the thing is that there are people now saying the entire world will change. We'll all be dealing differently. We'll all be working differently. We've all seen these things before, and everybody slips back into their normal routine afterwards and nothing much changes. I'm not sure whether this will be different. But I think that, I mean, you mentioned you were at Claire Allen's meeting last night. She's obviously a fellow council member with you, and I know she was very keen that we did the virtual meeting. But before this happened, she saw it as a way of sort of infilling the gaps in between the actual meetings with a way of getting hold of people. And I think if we look at the numbers, if your numbers that you had last night, if this were to be reflected across the country, which we believe it is being, looking at the bookings, the branches that we have at the moment will be attracting more than 1,000 members. Now that is excellent. Now, if we can get up to where I want it to be, where we've got one for every county, we've got sort of 55 or something or other, we will be looking at a considerable reach that we will have to people who perhaps were not engaging before. So I think it'll be good. But I think, like most things, there's an imperative at the moment, because everybody's feeling a bit lost and lonely, perhaps, and they need a bit more guidance. It's keeping it going as we come through this, and make sure that people remain engaged with the Institute, whether it's physically or virtually. I nearly said mentally, but we'll see.
I think.
Jacquie, sorry. No,
yeah, I think one of the things when a crisis happens, which is what's happened, is some technology gets it bounced forward. So at the moment, because we're in self-isolation and people are a bit cut off, the whole thing about webinars, Zoom meetings, meeting virtually has been bounced forward. And that's not going to change, because once you've got used to the technology and you're happy using it, then it can be continued to be used. And I think you're right. It's a case of how we bring everything together once this time is over. I think things will change, but I think things will also progress.
Yes, I think so. Jacquie, you've been with the Institute for a long time. Banks went away, came back again, run your own practice, run a business, done various things. You must be noticing quite a change as well now in the sort of engagement you have with people.
Yes, I mean, the questions are still very similar to the questions that I've always had. It's just the answers have become different now, because we're dealing with things in a different way. And if this had happened maybe 5 years ago, I think our members would have had real problems in dealing with keeping going with their clients, because in those days, the majority of work would be done by going into clients' premises or by people bringing papers to you. Now, I know that still happens a lot, but with the online and the cloud, I think actually it's made things a lot easier. The process of keeping the accounts is always going to be the same. It's just the method of getting the information in there has changed. And I think the technology is going to allow this to continue to some extent. Certainly when I was in practice, and it is probably 8 years ago now since I was in practice, the cloud computing was really only just starting to come in.
I think we've been fortunate that our members have been very quick to adapt and adopt the cloud. And consequently, it wasn't with this in mind, but we are in a much better position to hang on to our clients and to assist our clients virtually and remotely and on the cloud than I think a lot of accountants are. I was looking at one of the other forums recently, and accountants were saying that this is the end of the world as far as they're concerned. Their clients can't get them the information or anything, and they are still chained to their desk or something or other. So it might be fortuitous, but nonetheless, I think we take this with hands open.
Well, I think also, Gary, following on from the student webinar that you had this morning that I listened into, I think it's becoming very obvious that more of our members want to be taking everything that our clients do, of our clients' work from start to finish, including all the year-end stuff. And the cloud and the way our members work, I think, allows that to happen much more smoothly than by transferring information backwards and forwards to accountants, and without getting into the discussion of what happens when you transfer information to and from accountants, or what could happen. I think the whole technology and cloud computing is a boon for our members. And I think that's been proved in the last week or so, just with some of the questions we've been getting.
Yes, and I think we've obviously had members whose clients have thrown in the towel immediately and got very concerned. That was, I think, before a lot of the government assistance came forward. I'm not suggesting it's easy for people out there now, but at least there is a light at the end of the tunnel for them. And our members, generally, the ones that I'm speaking to, the ones on our forum, are saying that, yeah, now having thought about it, the clients are coming back and saying, well, look, I do want to try and continue. I am going to be necessary when this is all over. What can we do? And in fact, one of the big things that we've had is we're being told time and time again that our members are now onboarding new clients. They've got people who've never considered using anybody else before, who've done it themselves. And suddenly this is so damn complicated that they think, I better go outside for help. And they're coming to us in their droves. Well, certainly considerably higher numbers than we expected.
I think a lot of also with all the information that's coming out of government, and last week it was coming out at a fantastic rate. I have never seen so much information coming out from HMRC on the gov.uk website for a very, very long time. And it was, as we said last week when we were doing these webinars, the information that we were giving out was correct as at that particular moment in time, because it was changing from day to day. And if it's confusing to our members who understand mostly what this is all about, it must have been dreadful for some of the small businesses.
How are you finding it, Paula, with your clients?
It is kind of a mixed bag. The clients are coming to us and asking questions. The main area of concern at the moment is the job retention scheme and how that works and how they can put that into place. And I know from the webinars that I attended last week, that was really the biggest area of discussion. I've got a client who does MOTs, exhaust and tyres, and he was trading fine until they said you can have a 3-month extension on your MOTs, and the phone died. So I think the issue we've got is helping our clients understand the regulations and working with them, because most of them are going to suffer. I think there are very few clients that we have that are not going to suffer. Yeah. I mean, if you take, there was a really interesting thing on the BBC website today that I read, which was the garden centres and the people who produce plants, because this is the time of year that people would start going out and getting their shrubs, getting their spring plants and doing their garden. And people who are on furlough or people whose business have downturned, they might say, well, I might go and do my garden, but they can't get to the garden centres. And a lot of those growers are saying it's okay for many businesses like my car mechanic, because once the curfew's been lifted, he is going to be around. But they're saying our plants will be dead by then. So, you know, it's very much business by business, industry by industry, and understanding how they're each affected.
Yeah, it is. And I think there will be so many individual circumstances that we can't cope with all of them. But I mean, bookkeepers do cover such a wide range of clients that I suppose, that's why if one industry goes down, we've got another one to fall back on. One profession isn't doing quite so well, we've got another profession that is. This one, it's a complete close down almost, so it is difficult, but we're all in the same boat, and we've got to work together to get through this. And I think the last thing that we want to do is be negative, and I'm not saying we are, but when we're talking to our clients, we've got to be as upbeat as we can, even when it really doesn't feel like it. I think the last thing they want is another person giving a negative scenario. But let's see how things go. And it's early days yet. I mean, most of us have had a couple of weeks. I think we've been here for 3. I've been self-isolating. So we've got potentially, they reckon, another 10, 11 weeks to go. So those people who've got their partners at home for the first time working together and 3 or 4 kids screaming and wanting to do something, I should imagine the novelty will be wearing off pretty thin, and whether or not they're going to feel like keeping them there until September, I mean, you know, straight into the summer holiday, who knows? But watch this space, really. Amy, how are we doing on questions? Have you got anything there that you want to start giving us in bits and drabs?
There we go, just getting back to my screen. Yes, lots of really great questions, as always. Let's start off, only one person has asked a question about VAT, so I was thinking we could start with that one. So Diane, let me see if I can get this right. You said if a client was due to pay VAT on the 7th of May, but obviously doesn't pay, and then a refund is due at the next quarter, what will HMRC refund?
I saw that one actually. I was trying to work out the answer to it. At some stage, there's going to be some sort of reconciliation. Whether that will be reconciled at the end of the May quarter, the refund will definitely come back. HMRC have confirmed that. Whether the payment will have to then be deferred at a later stage, but there's nothing to say that you don't have to pay you don't have to defer your VAT payment. So if you've got your VAT payment there and then you wait for the rebate to come in, use the rebate maybe to pay the last VAT quarter and offset it in that respect. So I'm not sure whether they're actually going to net it off and just leave a balance in there. That's one of these tiny details that we're still waiting to find out about.
And I think the government is concerned that businesses that have got money to pay don't, and they just take this as an excuse not to do things. So I think if you can run normally or as close to normal as possible, I think you've got to carry on and try and run the business in that way.
We also had another one about universal credit. I think this is quite interesting. So Jan Moss, thank you for this question. And she's asking, if you're living with your parents, do the parents' savings count towards that upper limit of £16,000 worth of savings that, for example, your cohabiting partner could have? And then that would preclude you from being able to claim.
Yeah, I know it happens between partners. I'm not sure about parents. Universal credits and the detail of it is not something I'm completely up to date with. So we may have to come back on that one.
Okay, so let's come back on that one. Fabulous. Okay, so moving on to the self-employed. Obviously, we've heard that the self-employed can make use of the self-employed income scheme. Claire has asked, do you have to have been paying tax? Because one of her clients has always been falling beneath the personal allowance. So can you still claim if you're not profitable?
It does not include the personal allowance. It is the taxable profit that depends on what you can get. So if the personal allowance for this year, say, is £12,500. So if your income over the last 3 years was, say, £12,000, you will get 80% of that. And then, of course, you still won't pay tax next year because you'll be below the threshold. So it's not the amount on which you pay tax after your personal allowance. It is the taxable profit. Now, having said that, while I'm on taxable profit, what we haven't yet found out is, and I do need to go and have a look at a return, is whether what happens if you claim capital allowances, because that's obviously going to bring down the profit on which you're paying tax. But it may be taxable profit from trading, because if you're going to put the money back into the business and not take it out to have a fantastic lifestyle, but you're going to invest it back in your business, you're going to pay less tax, have less profits, but maybe then not get as much. So that's something I still have on my list, and we'll try and get back and put this up on the website for you.
Jackie, there was something about the money that comes, the £2,500 a month, must be treated as an income. So how would that work? So that person's income might just go above the 12,000.
Yes, what happens is with the self-employed is you'll get the grant coming through, and at the end of the year, you will declare it as gross income. So that then goes into your self-assessment tax return next March for the current year, and you will be taxed on it as you do normally, because it is expected to be a replacement for the money that you're currently losing as income. Now, what it doesn't do is say you can't work. So if your income has dropped but not gone down to zero, so you're not like a furloughed worker who hasn't got any work, you can still work. And this, I think, is particularly relevant to our members who may still be working with some clients but not others. You can claim the grant, and then that will then be offset and go into as income into your tax return next year.
Okay, that's great. Amy.
Fantastic. Just to say, just regarding the VAT, Julia Williams says that HMRC won't net off VAT payments, and you'd have to pay and then they will refund. Is that? That's
what I said. You need to wait for the refund to come through, and then I would then pay the VAT quarter based on the refund that you're getting, so that at least you pay most of it off. Return the refund to them rather than offsetting.
Fantastic.
Paula, how's it affecting your members? Have you managed to get them to stop paying their VAT and claim everything?
So are you asking me that?
Yeah.
I've got a mixed bag, actually. I've had quite interesting discussions with my clients. I've made it quite clear to them what their options are. But I've also made it quite clear to them that they will need to pay the VAT. And my understanding is it will need to be paid by the end of the tax year 2021. Yeah. So my view is, and unfortunately my VAT return was the end of January, so I just paid mine. But I've got a number of clients going, I want to pay it. I don't want that liability hanging over me. I think businesses need to think very carefully about taking up the scheme. I think it's a fantastic offer, and for some businesses it will be a lifeline, but they do need to bear in mind they're going to have to pay it. So for some of my businesses who have got it in reserve, they're just saying, actually, I'm going to pay it. I with all that's going on, I don't really want that hanging over me. So
you need a good bookkeeper. That's what it's all about, really, isn't it?
Well, it is advising your clients and giving them their options and letting them know what the statements actually mean, and also because you're so in touch with their bookkeeping, because you're so in touch with where everything is in their bank accounts. Perhaps explaining how it works best for them. In the end, it is their decision on whether they take the VAT up or not, but it might not be the best decision.
I always find it interesting when I meet people, mainly at Parliament or somewhere like that, that it's always assumed that all small businesses are crying out for loans and they haven't got any money and they can't get money from the bank and all this stuff. But actually a huge percentage of UK businesses don't work on anything other than perhaps a small overdraft. They've got money in the bank. It's a family business. They're running it properly, etc., etc. So yes, they might well have cash flow lying around that they can do this with. So not everybody is shouting at the banks wanting to borrow money. A lot of people just don't need money. They've got enough and they've sorted that out.
I think the key things there are if you need to take this up, then please do, because it is a government initiative to ensure that small business can continue. But do realise the implications of doing that, and that also builds into another discussion which we may not want to go into now, is the loans that the banks, the bridging loans that the banks are supposed to be giving out, and I'd be interested to hear what members say, but certainly the clients I've got who've applied for them have found it very difficult, and again it is a loan, so it will have to be repaid.
Can I come back on the VAT and the payments? You need to think about the timing on this, because the current VAT return that's being completed now, you will have invoiced for, and you're perhaps not getting paid, or the businesses are not operating, and therefore you have a VAT return that you submitted, but you don't have the money to pay for it because the cash flow's dried up. Now, if you then look at this going forward over the next quarter, your income is going to be dropped anyway because you're not trading as much. So therefore, the next VAT return is going to be pretty well non-existent, or might even be a reclaim because you've not got the income. So I think while we're in this situation, once we get past this first quarter, things will even out because you won't have massive VAT bills building up, possibly, if you're not working. So you won't have massive VAT bills to pay, say, for next quarter. And then by the time this goes and the businesses are getting back to some form of normalcy, the situation might help again. So I don't think we should think of this as we've got the next three, say 2 or 3 VAT quarters where we're going to pay a huge amount at the end, because they're not actually probably going to owe that much VAT over the next quarter.
No, and I think the completed VAT returns will feed government with a lot of information about the way businesses are moving anyway. Amy, next.
Okay, so let's move on to that. We'll stick with the self-employment scheme. Tracy Irvine asked if you can claim universal credit. I think this is an easy one. A universal credit whilst waiting for the self-employed grant to come through, because we've been told it won't come through until probably June.
Yes, I think you should be applying for universal credits if you can get online. We know a lot of our members have already done that. A lot of our members' clients have already done that. The only thing we're not sure about is whether that will be offset at some stage against income across the year. So we're not sure about that one.
Okay. If in doubt, apply for universal credit, I guess.
If in doubt,
at the time.
I was talking to one of our members whose clients are saying about applying for it. And I think it's a number of clients are looking at whether they should or shouldn't apply for universal credits. Now, without going into detail, this is where perhaps people have not been declaring their full income. And at some stage, we've had this conversation before, this whole scenario may very well come round and bite them in the back at some later stage when this is all reconciled. I say no more.
In the back, that was nicely put, Jackie.
I was trying to be very polite, Garry.
Yeah, I think that is the case, and it'd be interesting to see if Bill Dogwell tomorrow can tell us anything about this. But I think government has for a long time felt that people were using the system. The thing is, it's not avoidance as such. It's just delaying the inevitable or trying. Their rules say that you can do this, as people have always said, so it's just using the rules. So I think they'll probably change those rules. The interesting thing will be to see whether small businesses remain outside VAT or whether VAT will be changed as well, because there was talk about putting VAT on everything and no de minimis turnover, no £85,000 turnover. Why not put everybody on VAT? Because I know that one of the big, when I was talking to somebody in the Treasury a little while back, they were very concerned that what was happening was that people would get to 84,999 and then their partner would suddenly open up a very similar business until that was 84,999. And there are so many people trying to fiddle the system that the system, it might be actually the system that comes back and bites them. So it might change. We don't know.
We're one of the countries in Europe that actually has the highest VAT threshold anyway, £85,000. But there was quite a lot of discussion on this about a year ago, 2 years ago, before we took the decision to leave Europe, on rationalising everything across the EU. So there's quite a lot of EU VAT going on at the moment, but we may or may not, we'll be able to take our own decisions.
Yeah. Amy?
Okay, still on self-employment. Somebody's asking, Beatrix actually has asked about, as I understand it, it's the 18-19 year that you have to be self-employed for and have done your tax return for. But Beatrix is saying she's got a client who was self-employed before 18-19, was employed for 18-19, and is now self-employed again for 19-20. Is there anything that can be done?
I have a nasty feeling this is going to one of those 5% that's going to fall between, fall down the gap between all the help that's out there, because they have to. I think they had to have been in self-assessment for the 18-19 tax year, which is the one that was completed in January. So they've given it until I think we've got probably another 3 weeks for all those late filers to get the filing in return. So if they weren't in self-employment in that year, they're not going to count for self-employment. If they're in self-employment now, they won't count because they weren't in self-employment in 18-19. And the fact that they have the limited company then and they haven't paid themselves through a limited company since means they're not going to get that either. So I have a nasty feeling that might be one that's going to fall down between the cracks.
And that can't everybody then apply for universal credit though?
Everybody can apply for universal credit, yes.
Yeah. Very much, is that?
But it's £94.25 a week. It's the same as the statutory sick pay, which is better than nothing. But is it enough to live on for most people? Probably. Definitely not.
Will it be the same for Elizabeth Pears or Piers? Sorry if I've got that wrong. And she's got somebody who's self-employed, but last year their self-employed income was less than 50% of their income because of a temporary dip in profits, but it was more than 50% for the 2 years prior.
It's the average. So if they take the average of the 3 years, it has to be under 50,000 to claim, and more than 100%, more than 50% of their total income.
So fingers crossed.
It's the sums. Go do your sums.
Yeah.
It comes down to that, doesn't it? Okay. Fabulous. Oh, and Susanna Williams has asked, can you claim for the self-employed grant if you're receiving the state pension?
Again, it depends on the percentage of income. If you're, it definitely says if the income from self-employment is more than half of your total income, then you will qualify. Now, it doesn't define total income. So you could be working at part-time and have a self-assessment, which is a self-employment situation, which is the most. Or you could be on pension. It could be a state pension. It's part of your income. So I think as long as it's more than 50%, then you should be fine.
Yes, there was somebody on television on one of the programs recently saying that they've got 4 or 5 houses that they have rented out, and they have a small job. I think they do cleaning, but that meant that the income from their cleaning was only 30% of their total income. So they were told, no, you don't get anything. It's got to be more than 50%.
Yeah, and I think, Paula, do you know anything about the property side of it? Because that's one thing I haven't yet managed to find out. That's still outstanding from the other day, that one.
No, I haven't heard anything else on that in terms of his property income. I
don't think property income counts, because when they were looking, couple of years ago, when they were looking at making tax digital for tax, and we were all up into doing this quarterly return, they definitely separated out self-employment from property, because it was for the self-employed and property owners, and they made a distinction. And I don't think the government sees property rental income as trading from self-assessment.
I think you've got to look at the self-assessment forms, and because there's so many elements, so many pages to them. And my understanding is that the initiatives the government have brought in for self-employed is about that self-employment sheet.
And it's a completely different return. It's a separate section of the return. I can't remember the name. Is it 105 and 103, 102, I think. But they are completely different sections of the self-assessment tax return.
And that goes the same for dividends as well. Sorry, Garry.
Behind you, it's all right. You've got the Kent branch sign. You've got your company logo there. You've then got a Luca, which is wonderful, an ICB teddy bear, and a tub of Marmite.
That is very deliberate. I did look at my background. Marmite. Marmite, I love Marmite. Marmite, love it, hate it. It's something that's been associated with me for quite a long while. So it's actually a jigsaw puzzle, which I might get down tonight. So, when I get bored, I'll do the Marmite jigsaw puzzle. But yes, no, they're very deliberately, Garry.
All right, okay. Sorry, Amy. Yep.
Somebody's asked, and I believe this is true, will clients be notified by HMRC if they qualify for the self-employed income scheme?
Yeah, HMRC will contact you. I don't know whether anybody's been contacted yet. I have a funny feeling. I saw some notes going up on the chat line. I'm sure it was yesterday or Friday, that said some people have been contacted, others haven't. So I'm not sure when that's going to start, but it's they're trying to get the system set up for the furloughed workers in the first instance, and then they're rapidly working on the self-employment after that. So that may start, April starts tomorrow. So hopefully from now on. But I would leave it a week before you start to query, and then we'll try and see if we can find out when the start date is going to be.
And can I say, in all seriousness,
anybody receiving their letter from Boris yet about the, an over 70-year-old or whatever it is, anything like that? I haven't heard of anybody getting one of those letters yet. No? No. Okay, sorry.
We've got a postman at the moment. I haven't seen any post for over a week, so.
All right.
I'm actually assuming.
Mail stopped.
I'm assuming mine's going to come through tomorrow because it's April Fool's Day.
All right, okay. Yeah.
Isn't there? Naomi says that she's spoken to ICB today and we've confirmed that property income isn't included as it's not trading profits.
Sylvia Borehill has just come on to say that Neil has got his letter. So well done, Neil. Nice to hear from you, Sylvia. But good. So they are out there and they're on the path. Yeah, sorry.
Lorraine wonders, can the self-assessment 1819 tax return be resubmitted without claiming capital allowances to increase the overall claim for the self-employment grant?
I would not change your self-assessment at the moment. I just have a funny feeling that they really shouldn't include capital allowances in this calculation, but we're trying to find out. But certainly I wouldn't go back and change it, because they will be looking at those figures fairly quickly, and if you change it now, they may not be able to look at the changes.
Okay, I wonder if we could move on to...
Can I just mention one thing? It's another thing that's been prompted by Sylvia. She's asking whether Paula has put on perfume for this.
Okay, may I answer that question?
Yes.
Just to bring a bit of mid-session like relief, that I helped Claire Allen with her branch meeting last night, and I'm on camera, so I did my best to do my hair and my makeup and just naturally squirted perfume on. And I'm thinking, why am I doing that? But I have to say, I've made a similar sort of thing today, that I got ready for today's seminar and automatically cleaned my teeth, so I've got fresh breath. So hopefully for all those participating, you can tell that my breath is fresh. Old habits die hard.
Noted, and we're very pleased that you have done so. Yes, Amy.
I was hoping we could move on to the job retention scheme. Most of the questions are centering around furloughing for owner-managed businesses. Can sole directors furlough themselves? So I'm wondering if you guys could answer the questions of, we've got Vassan, Ruth, Claire, Stephen, Lisa, Emma. Loads of people just asking, can you just clarify when you can furlough yourself as a director? What kind of work can you do? And yeah, that should be it.
Okay, I think, and I will say now, the latest position as we understand this is that if you separate out the role of you trading, running your business, and actually doing the trading side from the running of the business, the director side, then you can furlough yourself as a worker, because you're not. So let's see, for example, I'm an ICB member and I'm working with a limited company, and all my clients have stopped giving me work. I could, if I was on PAYE, furlough myself from work and claim the 80%, but I would still have to run the business, because as a director, I still have legal responsibilities. Now, I did see one quick question came up, which was linked to that, Amy, which said, what about the payroll and actually running the VAT returns? Somebody has got to run the payroll and claim this furlough back, and that is not part of the trading of your business to bring in income. It is, so I would say yes, someone's still going to have to run the payroll, but you're not actually trading as such and furloughing yourself because you've got no income from trading. I don't know whether Paula's perhaps got any thoughts on that.
I think that is the case. I mean, it's something that we've tried to get clarification on. And I think the information that we've got at the moment is, there is a difference between carrying out the legal requirements of the business or furloughing or whatever it might be, and actually opening up shop and trading. You know, it is completely different. But I would suggest that if you've got clients, you keep an eye on that to make sure they're not carrying on as per normal. So, you know, if they've got a manufacturing company that is currently making masks or ventilators or something or other, they can't claim that they're all being furloughed when they're doing that. So, you know, just be careful on that. Again, bookkeepers are there to advise, and it's good to know that you're asking these questions. Hopefully, you'll now deliver those back to your clients from a place of understanding, and you know, you do this one properly.
But what about the many directors who are taking a small salary and dividends?
Tough. Basically.
Okay, let's try and say that in a slightly less.
If you have taken a very low salary, it is to reduce the amount of tax and national insurance that you're paying. If you take dividends, you will pay tax on that, but no national insurance. So yes, I'm sorry, but it's tough. You get it based on 80% of your salary, which has been PAYE'd. So it's definite that your dividends are not. So really sorry, guys. If you've lived on a very low salary and dividends, then you'll still be living on a very low salary, 80% of it, and not have any dividends.
And I know that from one of the other online programs, somebody was saying, can they now sue their accountant who told them to do this 5 years ago? Been doing it ever since. I think the answer is probably no. Because you didn't have to take the advice, I presume.
No, I think so. It's advice. And you're losing money now, but this is a very unusual situation. And if you've been doing it for a number of years, then anybody who has set up their own small business and work like this has done it basically for tax reasons.
Yeah.
And that's the be all and end all of it, because I would refer you also. The situation is changing as well. Nothing to do with COVID-19, but your payroll working rules are being really tightened up. I know the changes to it have been offset till next year, but it depends on the type of company you run. If you're a trading company, nothing happens. But if you're a personal services company, like our members will be, and you are working for one or two clients, and you would normally be self-employed, you would normally need to be employed by them, because the government thinks you should be employed, not self-employed, or working through your personal services company, then you should be paying tax and NI on all that money anyway, not taking it as dividends. And I think this loophole will be closed in the foreseeable future. They're starting to tighten up on the rules now.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is probably what Bill's going to be talking about tomorrow. You know, I'm preempting. He might not have anything like that to say at all, but last time when he spoke to us when we were at the House of Lords just before Christmas, he certainly dropped a number of hints, let's put it that way. But I think he's probably looking at this, and he'll be one of the few people who think that we can come out with an early positive on COVID.
Stephen Gale has asked, his director client who takes an annual payment in March, can he claim furlough?
If he's furloughing himself, he can, but he's got to look at what he bases his wage on, because it's the higher of the relevant monthly wage or the annual of the last 12 months. So if he paid himself last March, that's his salary, average that out, and then maybe take it monthly and claim it back. That's just a speculative thought.
One of our anonymous members is basically saying that she's in a tricky situation because she's running her practice from home, and the work still needs to be done, but there's less work. They're busier than ever, but still struggling to cover. And it costs the business. It feels like a no-win situation. I'm sure there's loads of members who feel the same way. Reduce the staff hours and pay accordingly, which seems unfair. It's the all or nothing approach which makes her feel trapped. Do you guys have anything you can say to that?
I think what's come out recently is it depends on the amount of work you've got, because if you're employing staff, I think we've agreed now that you can put staff on an offer furlough, providing there is a minimum of 3 weeks. So
yeah,
rather than cut everybody's work down and cut their hourly rate, consider whether you can perhaps furlough somebody for a month and then swap them over, and then you pay them what you would normally pay them for the hours that they're working, and then furlough them at 80% for the month that they're not working. And as long as this is done equally with no discrimination, and you can do it in agreement with your employees, I think that might possibly be the best way around this. If you're working from home, you're not I don't think, I know Paula probably knows this better than I, because I can't remember. The grant, I think, is available for those that are on premises where they're paying low or rates, and it doesn't include those whose rates are included in their rent. So those are the companies, businesses that are going to fall between the cracks.
I think we're dealing with a couple of issues here. So yes, you've got the rate relief. I know a bit about that because my husband's going to be available for that. But you've got to be renting. You've got to be renting an office. You can't claim that if you're working from home. So there's two things here. So there is the possible rate relief that I think will help those people who have offices, especially if they're in an office where they get rate relief anyway. I've got to do a little bit, and I do need to do a bit more research into that because it actually directly impacts my husband's business. Those people who are working virtually, which is what my business does, I've got the technology set up, we all work virtually. The biggest threat to my business is the fact that my clients downturn, and therefore the bookkeeping we need to do downturns, and that's what I've got to consider as to whether any of the staff need to go on furlough, which we haven't taken that decision yet. But the rate relief for those people who have offices and fall in the correct stipulations will be really helpful.
Amy, how are we doing?
Just a quick one. Somebody's asked, can you furlough for a month? Or does it have to be in batches of 3 weeks?
No, I think it's a minimum of 3 weeks, it says.
Yeah.
3 weeks is the minimum. That's great. Zoe Whitman asked an interesting question. If you've been furloughed, can you continue to work as a freelancer?
I haven't seen anything in the rules that says you can't, but not for that company.
Yeah, you need to be very careful.
Yeah, you've got to be very careful because, you see, we looked into this last week where what happens if you have two employers and one furloughs you and one doesn't. So you can carry on working for one employer and be furloughed for another. If you are furloughed, there is nothing, I don't think, to stop you going out and getting a job stacking shelves. Yep. You can still do that and go out and earn some money. But I think, don't forget, at some stage, it is going to all be part of your income. So if you're getting your 80%, you've got to make sure that you don't fall foul of your employment law, because if you're employed by someone, albeit on a furlough, and then you go and work for someone else and you're not available for them, you may be breaking the terms of your contract. So I think that one is almost an employment law query rather than a how much can I earn. Garry, you probably know far more about that than I do.
Well, we did try to get somebody to come on who was in the know as far as HR is concerned. They have respectfully declined at the moment because they didn't know either. So we are trying to work this one out. I mean, the main thing is you have to have an employment contract. Now, I understand that somebody estimated, I don't know whether this is true or not, that about 70% of all businesses employ people without a contract. They just take them on. They said as long as they're paying their salary, they think that's fine. So actually, they haven't got a contract which says we may furlough you. So some people are getting into a bit of difficulty at the moment. Or some people have just got what I would call an offer of employment or a letter of engagement, which skips over it on the basis that we'll get a contract at some stage down the line, and then that never actually happens. So it's as much a grey area as much of the other stuff that we're talking about at the moment. But I think you do need to be careful that you don't break the law. I mean, one of the good things I think that came out of the recent discussion is that directors are going to be able to make changes to their business and how their business is funded and how their business is managed and run without falling foul of the Companies Act and being declared as trading illegally or whatever. So they're going to, at least for the time being, allow businesses or directors of businesses to make decisions about things so that they can keep the business running. So I presume this is along the lines of who they can pay and from whom they can withhold money. So the fact that they've got money coming in, furloughed money or whatever, if they're not paying suppliers, they can still pay this money that's coming in from the government by way of a furloughed wage. So as you know, at the moment, there are certain considerations under the Companies Act. So they're trying to play those down at the moment. And as far as I'm aware, They will look at how you've run the business and make sure that it was necessary to keep the business afloat. And they were trying to do that, I believe, to stop people going into liquidation immediately and throwing their hands up and throwing the towel in. But as more and more businesses are doing this, some of the big airline companies and various other things, they might actually bring out better information. I mean, if you think of the questions that our members are asking here, you can imagine sitting in a government office and they come up with a brilliant idea and then everybody keeps asking questions. You know, I feel very strongly that they're doing their best, but I do feel for them in as much as there must be so many wrinkles in this that they just haven't even thought about yet.
Well, I actually
right?
I actually rang the HMRC new COVID-19 helpline that we put the number up on the website on Friday for some information, and I did get through fairly quickly, and they couldn't answer my question, and they said they would have a tax specialist ring me back. So I thought, oh yeah, in about 6 days. They actually rang me back an hour and a half later, and when I put the question to them, the answer was similar to Garry's. Well, actually, we don't know the answer to this. The only way I've seen this is on the Money Expert website, which is Marty Lewis's website, which I thought was quite amusing from an HMRC tax inspector. So, yeah, they're struggling. They're trying to keep up with the bosses that are announcing these grandiose schemes on high, and then the grunts in the back office are having to make it work. So,
well, we did the first of our seminar webinars like this morning for students. And we had about 3/4 of the people who came on were students, about 1/4 were members, because everybody seems to be taking this as an opportunity to up their learning, get more qualifications, which is great. And Peter Stewart, our Director of Learning, came on. He did a presentation on our Level 4. We've debated it, we've worked through it. Jackie, you'll know about this. We've pulled so much hair out trying to get this right. Amy has steered a lot of this as well. We put it out there this morning. And lo and behold, we've got people on, you know, saying, well, I want to come back and study. I haven't done anything for 10 years, but between then I've done this, I've done that. Can that be taken? There isn't an average returning student out there, and it must be the same with the average self-employed person. So anyway, Amy, any more burning questions?
There's children in the room with me, just in case there's lots of noise. So there are still a couple of questions, just, you know, what still counts as work if you're furloughed? Someone says, can the director be furloughed if they're still managing cancellations, COVID-19 related cancellations? That's someone who's part of a holiday accommodation booking site. Somebody else has asked, do you need to take your website down? And presumably you have to refuse any orders. And yeah, that'll do for now, I think.
I think if you're trading, if you're taking orders, that counts as trading, and I think you can't furlough yourself if you're doing that.
Now, you say that, Jackie, but a lot of people are saying, let's show our support for retailers. Let's buy vouchers for when we all come through this, you know, to give traders a bit of chance. If you're just selling vouchers, I think we need to check whether that would count, because I don't know.
I think these are, I'm also keeping an eye on some of the questions that are coming up, and some of these are really very specific. And I think for the really specific ones, like, for example, reporting on an accruals basis in your self-assessment tax return for this year, and where does the grant go? I think it's far too early to be looking at questions like that, because with the best will in the world, I don't think any of us are going to be doing self-assessment tax returns on the 6th of April. So
get it from Jackie.
Might have to come back and answer those later.
I think somebody's asked a nice question here. They've got a director-owner client whose business is construction, fitting windows, and they've closed themselves. He's furloughed himself, but he understands that the NHS may want to get him to fit some windows for them. If he's on furlough, presumably he can't do that. But can he do that?
You can just stop being furloughed, can't you? Just walk the furlough, end off.
Stop being furloughed.
Yeah. You can stop being furloughed at any stage, can't you?
I think if you've got work coming in, yes. I think that's why they've said it has to be a minimum of 3 weeks. So if after 3 weeks you've actually got work coming in, and there will be companies still working, then...
Yeah, because funnily enough, I mentioned earlier that on Friday we've got Jane James coming on, and she was just saying that her husband, he is some sort of mechanical engineer and his company makes all sorts of strange things. They've just got a contract to come up with, I think it's beds, but plus also ventilators, etc. So all of a sudden they've taken the mothballs off and they're going back into production. So that being the case, presumably they're going to get paid for that at some stage. And so, yeah, the furlough stops. And given the choice of furloughing or doing some work, I'd do the work. And particularly as it's the NHS. I mean, that's calling a call to arms, as it says.
So it seems like I misinterpreted someone's question earlier. It was a question about saying that furloughing is unfortunate because it's all or nothing. What they've clarified is that they've got an office manager for their bookkeeping practice who is now working from home and can only do half of their job. And the practice owner is now doing the other half. I mean, I wonder whether what the person is wanting ICB to do is lobby for a partial furlough position. I just wonder if that's reduced hours might be the solution there.
The rules at the moment are that if you are on furlough, you cannot work. There is nothing about part-time furloughing or reduced rates. It's almost the opposite to the self-employment grant, where you get the self-employment grant based on the previous 3 years and you can still work. It counts as income still. So we've almost got the two ends of the spectrum here.
I think they have to look at what work they'll be doing, because an office manager's role is very well, yeah, and most offices would love to have an office manager, but actually, if she's merely fielding the phones and then passing people through to you who then require bookkeeping, I think you have to look at it. So I'm sorry, on this occasion, we can't furlough the receptionist. Also, we can furlough the receptionist, and you have to answer the calls yourself.
I think also, Garry, if you think about it, if you've not got any income in, the idea of the furlough as staff is that if you have no work for them, if they're going to work, you pay them, but you've obviously got to find the income to pay them. And if you haven't got any income coming in, how can you pay the staff anyway? Very, very difficult one. And these are the really detailed questions that are starting to come out now. But until we perhaps get some more detail coming out, there's everyday HMRC. I know Amy was updating our website last week, and the HMRC website was changing faster than she could update ours. I just think it's...
Yeah, we had a member recently who said that her client has rung her up and said, look, I can't afford to pay you, but I need my books doing. I'll pay you when all this comes through. And I said to her, well, okay, but that means you can't be furloughed, or you can't go off. I think you have to say to your client, I can't do it that way. If I come out of getting government money to help you, I need some money. So you can't do that. And what I said was, look, you're doing the books. You know how the business is doing. Are they able to pay you? Are they just paying somebody else instead? Or what? You have to take a bookkeeper's view of this, dare I say. And
I think the answer to that one, Garry, is are they a limited company or are they self-employed? Because if they're self-employed, they'll get the grant anyway, which should get them through the next few months. If they're the limited company, then they're looking at the furlough and not doing any work.
I think this raises a bigger question, actually, and I think I'm really quite glad it's been raised, is as bookkeeping practices, and we did sort of talk about this a bit today, is how are we going to deal with our clients? I'm collecting my invoices from my invoice run in February. They're now due. We need to be paid for the work that we're doing. And there was a question the other day also about what if you're on a monthly rate? And I've got a number of clients where they get charged the same amount per month. Now, I'm going to continue charging them that, because perhaps for April and for May, my bookkeepers who fulfill those contracts may not be doing so much. But then when we come out of this, they're going to be really busy. So there's this flat line. I think you need to negotiate with clients, but I certainly think if a client said to me, I can't afford to pay you, or I'm not paying your invoice because, that would go to quite a serious discussion.
I think it has to. And the other thing is that if you've done what a lot of people do in order to come up with a monthly rate, you've averaged out what you're going to charge the client over 12 months and you divide it by 12. Now, if they're not going to pay the middle three, it could be that that middle three, because of tax returns and VAT returns and everything else, was actually, you know, a bit more in the, it didn't level out. So therefore, you miss those 3 months, you're not going to get your time covered by the other 9 months that you're billing for, you know, at a fixed rate. So, yeah, I noticed that Mark Wickersham has changed his way of speaking a little bit now, having got everybody into monthly fees and everything. He's sort of backtracking a little bit now, but he and a number of other people. So not just Mark, if you're listening, Mark, but anyway. Amy, any more questions there?
Yeah, loads of questions.
All right.
Coming.
Right.
We're getting through them. And just still on the furloughing, Sandra has just asked the question about if an employee is shielding, i.e. they are part of this vulnerable category, they've been told they must stay at home for 12 weeks, can you furlough them?
Yes, I think that's been confirmed now.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
There's one question on minimum wage on there. 2 questions coming in on minimum wage. Can we?
Yeah, you can jump to those if you like. Yeah.
I was just going to say, because it's, we were talking about the amount of paying. Somebody's come back, I think it's Pauline has come in and said about the minimum wage. A client's employee reaches April and everything, wages go up. I think this is the same with everybody, that we have agreed for national minimum wage. The 80%, what you pay them does not necessarily match what you're going to get in the grant. So the grant that's coming in will be 80% of their wage at the relevant period in time. National minimum wage, I think we've pretty well confirmed that, does not come into play when they're on furlough, because that is only for people who are working. So if you then wish to increase their income over and above the grant that you're going to get, then you can do that, but the grant will be based on 80% of what they were earning at the relevant period. Can I also pick up on something just to clarify? I noticed yesterday afternoon there were some questions about what is the 80%. I think, and how much you can pay them. I think probably a very simple explanation. Let's assume that you have an employee who you're paying £2,000 a month last year, and you furlough them. The government will pay you 80% of that. So you will get £1,600 a month for that employee. So you pay them the £1,600 a month while they're furloughed, and then claim the national insurance and any minimum pension contributions back from the government. So you'll get £1,600, which you then pay to your member of staff, and you'll get the rebate of the national insurance. If you pay national insurance, because if you're claiming the employer's allowance, of course you won't pay the national insurance, so therefore you won't claim it back. If, however, your employee is on, say, £4,000 a month, 80% of that is more than 2,500. So the only grant that you will get for them is 2,500. And that's what you will pay them unless you want to top up their salary. And that applies to everyone. So I think last week, when it was still very new, we were talking about, well, we pay 80% of the 80%. No, you pay your employee what you're claiming back in the grant, and then you claim back the national insurance and the pension contributions on top of that. We did put a calculation up on the website in the article from the ITV. If you look at the ITV one that we did, there is an article attached to that in news on the website, and it gives a worked example. So I just wanted to clear that one up.
So that's go onto the website, just for those of you who don't know this, bar across the top, under resources, COVID, you've got a whole hub there, lot of information, links to government notifications, etc. Amy and her team have been working. Jackie has answered most of these questions, and then Amy and her team have put that into a sort of an article that's gone up there. I think most of your questions have been answered now. 1 or 2 have still got a holding on them, but that's only because we don't have an answer, rather than we haven't quite got round to it. But we are doing all we can to make sure we answer absolutely everything.
Can I just chip in on the business rates relief? This is available to small business. I just saw something pop up. My understanding, and again, this is very pertinent to my family situation, as it does affect my husband's business, is that you will be contacted by your, I think it's your county council, if you are eligible to claim a grant under the business rates relief. So do keep an eye on that.
Somebody has asked about that. Claire with an I has said a client of hers runs a swim school and rents a number of pools across London. The pools have closed, income has stopped temporarily. The swim school has a head office, but apparently the local council says that that head office isn't eligible for rates relief because it's an office rather than the pool site. Does that seem unfair to you, or does that seem to make sense?
I think that's normal for offices, isn't it? Really, it's a head office. I don't know.
But if the business,
I think that's probably pretty standard.
Is leisure.
Yeah, but they're not paying the rates for leisure, are they? As such, they're a management office, surely. Ooh, that's yeah. Good. Well, yeah, I mean, I would think that'd be the case because, I mean, some of our bookkeepers have got leisure centres, so they don't get a discount themselves, do they? And I don't know. I think that's probably right. It's if it's a physical centre, isn't it? A leisure centre or a health centre or something like that, or a school.
Well, Sarah Hayes has just put up that actually her husband has been contacted this week. That's really good news. I think that somebody's saying positive. Yeah, actually that's happened. My husband's business has been contacted. They've been sent a form, easy to fill in. So for people who feel they might be eligible for that, or clients eligible for that, obviously the initiative is rolling out.
Now, we had a question before. It's not up here, but it's one we missed the other day, I think, and that is I've closed my bookkeeping temporarily, but I've now got 4 new clients that have come for me. I've already applied for the benefit. What do I do? Well, basically, I think you get back out of the benefit. You get back on the practice horse and ride into the sunset, hopefully. I mean, they sounded like quite lucrative clients from what I gather. Once you've applied for the grant, can you give it up and start again?
Which grant has been applied for? Because you can't apply for self-assessment yet because they're giving a
universal credit.
Universal credit. Okay.
Then I think you decide whether you're going to come out of that or not, because you're not actually got any income at the moment, because even if you start working, you're not going to be able to get any income from them for a while.
Well, she was taking prepayment only, and these new clients had said straight away, yes, okay, that's fine. I need my books urgently done because I'm in a complete mess. So, I don't know.
In that case, I think, from what I know of universal credits, they'll probably reclaim it pretty quickly because you have to declare. Don't you have to go online and declare if your income changes with universal credits? Yeah,
that's probably right. I mean, she probably could have got the answer herself, but as always, they like to come to their institute, even if it's only for a good chat, which is fine. We're very happy with that.
As it is the dawn
of a few more questions, Amy.
I'm wondering if we might be able to quickly talk about employment allowance. There have been some changes. A couple of people have asked about it, and also wondering whether you can claim employment allowance if you are the sole director of a business on PAYE.
No, that's a definite no. That's the employment allowance is not available, or it wasn't under the old one, and I think it's the same now, for limited companies where an individual or a husband, a wife, or cohabiting partners are the sole directors. The employment allowance doesn't count, and that was withdrawn about 3 years ago. So sorry.
So there have been some changes to employment allowance, haven't there? There's a sort of an upper limit now. Is that right?
Yes, it's gone up from 3,000 to 4,000, but when I was reading it, there are stipulations as to who can claim it and who can't, I think, now.
One other thing just to mention, it's a bit off-piste at the moment, but we have had one client, one of our members, who rang in and said that her client had been contacted by HMRC and told that they had they had the money ready to go. Could they possibly give them their bank account details and it would be put in within 48 hours? It's a scam. HMRC does not ring people for that information. So please, any of you out there, please get that out to your clients. it doesn't matter what disaster we have, there's always somebody wanting to make a fast buck out of it. So I would suggest that you try and just mention that to your clients and use it as part of your ongoing communication with them.
Can I just come back on that employment allowance one? That might be one for Ian to answer on Thursday, and anything specifically to do with how this is going to run through the payroll and changes to that would be one for Ian on Thursday rather than me, because he's much more, it's what he does for a living. So
I think that's a great idea. So Helen, if you can catch up with us again on Thursday. Yes, Thursday. Our payroll expert will be here and he can help you with that. Somebody's asked, still on the subject of furloughing, and Clara has asked, one of my clients wants to tell his employees to use up their holiday entitlement instead of furloughing. Is that something you can do?
The thing is, if you think about this logically, if they are being asked to take holiday, you're going to have to pay them holiday pay anyway, and you can't claim that back. If you put them on furlough, then at some stage they're going to be entitled to that holiday, which you're going to have to pay them anyway at a later stage. I think it's quite a tough one.
There was a point raised that the government have covered this somewhere, and that is that you can hold that holiday entitlement, but so that not everybody suddenly has to take all of their holidays in the last 3 months of the year, if that's how far it gets. You could hold it over for up to 2 years, which again is against the Companies Act or Health and Safety Act or whatever it is. You are supposed to give your employees their holidays at the right time, but and then that's there. However, if people are, where this, I also have the answer on, is if your employees are now working from home, as are, for example, all of the Institute's staff, they have to take holidays as per the normal requirements. So they can have, I know they're still at home and it's exactly the same, except they're not answering the phone, so it's a break. They have to take holidays. They have to take lunch breaks or whatever they're entitled to normally. That can't stop. It only changes when the furlough comes in.
Okie dokes. We can also cover that with Ian on Thursday as well. There are a couple of other questions about holiday pay. Jane wonders if you have to include the holiday pay paid during the 1920 tax year to calculate the average pay, or do you just look at the hours worked?
No, I think it's got to be the income. It's not to do with the hours that worked. It's the amount that they're paid on average, because they were entitled to that and they were paid holiday for hours having worked. So I would think you have to include gross income, including regular overtime. The only thing it doesn't include, I think, is bonuses, fees and commissions. But again, that might be one that Ian can confirm on Thursday.
Yes, the other one we need to get confirmed is some people have asked if they get a car allowance.
Yeah.
Which obviously they get an allowance, they then hire a car, they normally take out a car on hire purchase or something or other, on some sort of loan, and they're left holding that bill. Well, that doesn't come as part of the income. And so we were saying that you need to go to your leasing company and try and get a holiday period for that.
And a question about 0 hours workers and whether they accrue holidays. Jane says they are paid for their holidays when they take them. So if holiday pay is included, would that not mean that they are receiving holiday pay on holiday pay? Or would it be deemed that they'd already been paid their holiday pay for this period?
It's just what they're paid, isn't it?
No, I think they're paid. Because they would otherwise be working. They're just being paid an average. Holiday pay is based on an average of, it was always the last 12 weeks, but I think they're taking it back from April, or they have taken it back to be an average of the previous year, previous 12 months, I think, as to the amount that you pay them, not just the last 12 weeks. I read that somewhere not so very long ago.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a couple of questions about that. Do you include February hours and prorate it up to a full month when calculating the average pay?
If they started in February, I think you can then prorate it up based on their February salary on a prorata basis.
So as in if they don't have any previous earnings. And if the hours per week vary on the 0 hours workers, and you need to work out the average pay, is it the total paid through the year divided by the number of weeks paid, even if it includes holiday pay? Is that all?
No, it will be averaged. I think it's averaged over the 12 months, because that's what they will earn in the last 12 months. So I think you have to average it over the 12 months rather than the number of weeks they were being paid. And that will give you their average weekly or monthly income on which to base their furloughed income.
Yeah, so you divide what was paid by the number of weeks and multiply it by 52, and that gives you the annual income, yeah?
Or just take the total they were paid, divide it by 52, and that's their average weekly income over the year.
Right, yeah.
Can I just pick up on something, going back to grants, something I picked up earlier from a very, very early comment, a couple of minutes after 3 o'clock. Somebody asked about the Economic Resilience Fund. I had a quick look at this, and yesterday the Welsh government have announced grants of up to £10,000 for micro businesses, and it's aimed for businesses in Wales that apparently are going to fall between the cracks of the government. It's the first time I'd seen it, so I've had a look. So if you have a business in Wales, it might be worthwhile looking at the Economic Resilience Fund.
Yes.
There is one in the UK, though, there's £10,000 grant for small businesses.
Yeah, but I think this is over and above for those that perhaps don't qualify
for that either.
The Welsh government are putting in some extra. It said a new £100 Development Bank of Wales Fund will be available for companies experiencing cash flow problems, will provide loans. And again, I think it's for those companies that may not qualify under the government scheme. But I know nothing more about it because I haven't had a chance to read it properly yet.
Yeah, so Faye did ask that, and it looks to me like they're still finalising the application process and the eligibility for that. But yeah, £400 million worth of emergency grants for micro and small and medium businesses. So that's quite.
Yeah, I feel justified that when I go onto the stage at Summit, I quite often come up with strange ideas. I announce it at Summit, and then everybody has to run round and try and make it all work. I'm afraid government seems to be the same at the moment. Somebody somewhere says we can spend some money, it is announced, and then somebody somewhere else has to say, oh my God, how do we get this out there? How do we apply for it?
I did allude to that earlier in an earlier comment, Gary.
Yeah, right, okay.
I wonder if we can move on to childcare. A couple of people are working with clients in the childcare business. Caroline asks, can a childcare setting furlough their staff, even though they'll be receiving funding from the government to cover the cost of childcare for 3 to 5 year olds? And somebody else Caroline has wondered the same thing. Can they
They'll receive it for people who are to whom they're giving childcare, won't they? It won't just carry on with it? Or is that an anomaly of the childcare system? So in other words, they can't be furloughed because they'll be caring for the children of the essential workers. Yes or no?
Well, if they're required to provide that childcare, then yes.
A lot of childcare places are closing down, though, aren't they? There was something on our local news, on the South East News, about the number of childcare facilities that are closing down because they just can't afford to keep going.
Yeah.
So Pauline Nichols actually says that her sister-in-law is childminding for key workers, which is fantastic.
Yeah, well done her.
And Caroline says it's confirmed that they will still receive the funding promised for the summer term.
Could you repeat that? Just repeat that?
Well, Caroline says it's confirmed that they will still receive the funding promised for the summer term, which is great because school's out still. Okay, fabulous. I think we're doing quite well with these questions, actually. And another one from Zoe Whitman. She was saying that, well, she was speaking to a national newspaper about loans not being the right option for many small businesses. And she's wondering what you guys think about that and what sort of advice should we be giving clients before they take out a loan?
Gosh, that seems to fall in my department. From what I understand, the loans, so it's the loans specifically because of the COVID crisis, they're looking at businesses who might need to take out loans to get through the COVID crisis. They've still got to jump through the hoops to show that the business is sound, the business is ongoing, and it is the COVID crisis. It's CBILS, isn't it? It's COVID Business Interruption Loan Scheme. There you go, CBILS, got it. Hey, how good am I? I know I didn't just look that up. I have remembered that. So the thing about a loan is the banks will reserve the right to do the valid checks they have to do to ensure that your business is sound. And the reason why you've got disruption is because of the COVID crisis. So I think the same loan criteria applies to get these loans. You can't apply for a loan if your business is in trouble already and you're using this to get to keep you going through COVID. So I think the banks have had a lot of bad press actually in the way they've approached this. But businesses will have to provide the evidence that the loan is needed because of this crisis. If you're going through the CBILS screen, there is a whole web page on that. I'll try and find that for you, and it helps businesses know who to apply to and where to apply.
You have to prove that your business has got a product that is going to be required afterwards. But if you're going to take on a loan just to keep you in money for, say, a 3 or 6 month break, if your business is stacking up and waiting for you to come back, so you're going to get that missing 4 months packed into the last 4 months of the year, that is one thing. If you are on, something presumably like the poor gardener's wholesale gardener that was talking before, those plants are dead. He's not going to be able to sell those when he comes back into business and people start coming out. He's going to have a whole new range. So they will look at it very carefully. And I noticed yesterday, I think it was, 2 very large organizations have gone into liquidation. But when asked, the commentator said, yes, they were actually in trouble beforehand. They'd been struggling for some time. And now the banks have decided that this was not the appropriate time to keep them afloat because there was no prospect of them getting out of difficulty. Because they basically were trading at a minus, and they had been doing for quite some time.
Well, FICB is the absolute classic example. FICB had been struggling on. They're now gone, and they did say, "Oh, it's COVID." Well, we know it wasn't. We knew they were struggling. And of course, the other big high street name that went recently in the last 24 hours, Carluccio's.
Yeah, and he was saying that, he'd been struggling for some time. They hadn't got enough covers at night, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know where his restaurants are, but in London, trying to get a restaurant was always very, very difficult. So if you're not getting it right when times are good, you can't really, it sounds mean, but you can't really expect people to dole you out from tax money when this happens and use it as an excuse to just pay yourself something to stay at home for the next 6 months or so. It's a difficult one. I think there are going to have to be some rather cruel decisions made over the coming months.
So I do think the loans are a fantastic resource when used in the right way. But I've spoken to a couple of my clients, and we've debated long and hard about how they're going to use them, why they're going to use them, because and also what are the terms as well, because they will need to be repaid. But it is a resource that some companies will, it will make the difference for them through COVID. But for those clients who are already weak or struggling, I think you're right. The question is this loan just going to stave them up for another few months?
But I think that's also good business for our bookkeepers, because they're being asked for cash flow projections, which is something we've always been very big on with ICB, and it's something that our members need to get to grips with. And they're almost being asked to guarantee the future of the business, so they've got to be very careful that they get that right. And and I keep saying this about clients, it doesn't mean the clients are all like this, but you do need to be careful. If the client comes to you and says, look, we're struggling here a bit, but if you were to add a 0 on that one and take a bit off that one, we're going to look a lot better. You might be called to account when those figures are proved to be completely fictitious at a later date. So don't do it. You must never do that. The thing about being a bookkeeper is you're dealing with very black and white stuff. And, you should be dealing with fact. Fiction has got no place. You've heard of the term creative accounting. You've never really heard of the term creative bookkeeping, and it should stay that way. Bookkeeping is bookkeeping. It's what's in the books. Is that right, Jacquie?
Absolutely. Can I just go back to business grant, the Welsh business grant. Can I thank Sylvia? Thank you, Sylvia, for correcting me that the 10K small business grant is only available in England as announced. Therefore, the Welsh announcement that we were talking about just now is the Welsh version of it. So thanks for that, Sylvia. She keeps me on my toes, does our Sylvia?
Oh, yeah.
Patrick, Udale is just wondering if we could just revisit the question of the self-employed and that this trading profit. I think you said, Jackie, that we were going to find more information, but he just says, is it only based on taxable net profit, e.g. after expenses,
yes,
rather than
it's
turnover?
Definitely taxable profit. It's not turnover. The only question that I'm confused about at the moment is whether that taxable profit is before or after any capital allowances. And I will come back and we will put something up on the website about this.
Ian has just said, fantastic panel. Sorry, I've got to run. Yeah, bye, Ian. Nice of you to be with us. An hour and a half goes by very quickly. If there's still somebody out there, we're happy to continue for a little while. Amy, how many questions do we have that you can squeeze into about 10 minutes?
I think we've done a darn good job, actually. I was thinking though that maybe one to finish on is from Karen. She wonders what you feel about charging clients for the extra work that's involved in processing furlough or claiming grants. She says, obviously, some clients are in financial difficulties, but this, of course, is work.
That's a very good question.
Not one for me.
I can speak from my own practice and also from conversations I've had with my friends in practice, one in particular. Gosh, I kind of feel that disseminating the information, because also it's a learning curve for me, okay? I think this is the point I'm going to try and make. So I've been looking at the science, bringing all the information together, sending emails out. That's kind of part of the service. I think if some additional work was needed and required that was beyond my own learning, then I would agree that with the client. I just don't think it's the right time to load hours on, especially when actually what you're doing is yourself getting yourself up to speed and then dealing with your clients. And a lot of us with bigger practices, I think we kind of see it as part of what we do, which is helping our clients. So I definitely don't have a clock on. I'm helping you with your question about the job retention scheme. Click. Oh, that's an hour. I'm charging you for that. So yeah, that's an interesting question. I just don't think it's time to look at the hours and make money. I think if there is significant work to do, or somebody's asking you to do something specific that you feel you should bill for, then you need to agree that. But otherwise, I think we're just ourselves keeping up to speed and helping our clients as much as we can.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think the thing is there is being put on and there's helping. I mean, you have to take that judgment. And it may be that you try and help a client out and it doesn't work and the client disappears. But, we're all in a bit of a mess at the moment. I think we have to realise that we do have a challenge that we can be called upon to use it as bookkeepers. So therefore, I think we just have to be grown up about this. I mean, Paula's here today. She's not getting paid for this. The clock isn't. Sorry, Paula, you've just gone pale. No. So, yeah, we're doing whatever we can. And a lot of the people that are coming on here and acting as our guests, you don't get anything for this. I mean, Jackie has been here, 5 days out of the last 6 or something or other, and it's a way of trying to help everybody that we come across, really. So, yeah, I think you just have to weigh it up, decide what you're doing, and just be happy in yourself, if you like, that what you're doing is right. It is a difficult one, I appreciate, for people. And, you've got your concerns as well as individuals. You might be finding it a little bit tough. You're arguing with the building society saying you don't want to pay the rent. You're trying to feed people on a lower amount of money. And these are very, very difficult times. So we do absolutely appreciate that. Here today, though, you don't want to see us all looking glum and despondent, because we're not. You want to see us positive because, I know from what a lot of you have said about looking at this over the last week or so, it's nice to see a friendly face. You know, it cheers me up. It makes me feel great again. I go out and do wonderful things. That's brilliant. That's what we're here for. It's actually what the Institute has always been here for. You know, that's why we do conferences. It's why we do seminars. It's why we do Inspire. It's why we do branch meetings. You get together with your fellow professionals and you live from each other, really. You know, you suck that all up. So you knew the soapbox was going to come in at some stage today, didn't you? Well, that was it anyway. So never mind. I think the time has come to thank everybody, particularly you know, my guests today. Paula, thank you very much for coming in, our Chair of Council, and we've had a lot of the council members on as well, including Sylvia. Jackie, thank you again. Your information, as always, is really, really helpful because you've seen it from all sides. You've taught it, you've done it. You know, you've got more. Tested it. Yeah, exactly. So, and now you're trying to figure out what it's all about.
Yeah.
Amy, thanks again for steering us today. I think it was useful to try and group together some of the questions, because yesterday, I must admit, I was moving the scroll on, Jackie was answering one, and then my scroll was moving and various other things. So I think that was much better today.
We have some very smart questions coming through, so thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. They are great. Thank you for coming on board. I mean, we've had, literally for these meetings, we've had thousands of people coming on, which is fantastic. You know, and this is the end of the week, and you know, we've got hundreds coming on now. By the time this is put onto the web and people download it, again, I expect the audiences to be over the thousands. And that's absolutely fantastic. We're here because of you, and I hope that we're giving you what you need. If you've got any suggestions or anything else you want to take out of these webinars, please let us know. Because what we're going to do moving forward, as you understand a bit more what's going on at COVID, and as you know all about furthering and everything else, we're going to take this opportunity to give you some of the things we wanted to give you for some time. Paula, for example, I got asked today in the student section, what happened to the business builder? Well, she's still there, but at the moment we are looking at obviously a different way of delivering this, because it's good to go out and meet, but you can't at the moment. So we're going to be doing something with that. We've got several of our members who've got particular skills, and they're going to come on and do that. And we need to take this opportunity to build up our skills, be ready to go out there and give our clients even more service. I can't say better service, because you always give good service, but more service. So extend yourself to be able to offer that bit more. And as I said earlier, we had the first student meeting this morning. A quarter of the people who came on were full members, and they were interested in our new level 4. They want to move up to become fellows. They want that FICB logo after their name. So, you know, it's all about taking more and more steps forward, being there ready to go for everything, because at the end of this, there are going to be a lot of very messed up books that are going to need to be sorted. So thank you all for your time. I hope to see you tomorrow. Don't forget, tomorrow, 3 o'clock again, Bill Dodwell, Office for Tax Simplification. Let's see what he can do. And if you want to know a little bit more about where to go with your study, you might be a member, you might be a student. Join me again in the morning at 10 o'clock when we'll be talking about study again and learning and what's available to you. But meanwhile, have a great afternoon. Thank